I had a nice little thing that happened last week, 2 weeks ago, that kind of segued us into it. I'm going to get into it, even though it really didn't happen this week. We had a few people show up late, and it's one of the things that I want to address because I don't think it gets realized when people show up late. And it's up to you guys to look at to grab those guys and shake them by the collar and tell them that's not acceptable. But I'm going to get you to understand why right now. Okay, how much it adds up and how quickly and how much money it is, because it's not obvious. So our average pay rate, I'm going to call it $25 an hour. We're just going to call it $25 an hour between apprentices and electricians. I would say that's probably low. Let's call it 25. I think I called it 30 last time. So if at $25 an hour, how much does that equate to when we have somebody show up late? Because it's not $25.
Or if they're late, they're not clocking in, right?
What do you think who knows what burden rate is? Anything? Labor burden? Labor burden is the cost on top of the cost of your pay rate. So if you get paid $25 an hour, then you add a certain percentage, and every company's different. So if you used to work no benefits, and that rate's going to be pretty low. It's not going to be zero, but it's going to be pretty low. If you think about taxes, Social Security and Medicare, you guys see that come out of your check, right? You see it every week. We pay the exact same amount, the company does. So you pay that amount, the company actually pays that exact same amount, both of Medicare and Social Security. So that adds to that burden, and that's for every hour you work. That money adds to that. And then you've got all the costs associated with you guys working. That is vacation, PTO, paid time off, paid days off. You've got health insurance. You've got workman's comp. There's a whole lot of different costs. Not only that, there's some other costs that go into it that isn't considered, sometimes considered, sometimes not. But in our company, we calculated out it's 75%. I used to think it was 40%. It's not. 75%. So do that real quick. 25 times 1.75. What number does that bring us out to? All right. So that's $43.75 for an hour. And you guys, when your guys show up late, and Jesse, you've got a ton of guys that show up that have shown up late. Let's just do some quick math over the course of the year. Let's just say 5 minutes late. So we're going to divide that by 60. So we're 73 cents a minute times 5. So that's $3.64. If they do that over the course of, let's just say we got one person that shows up 5 minutes late every day for the course of a year, $729.
Well, y'all pay that without them being clocked in?
If it depends on if they clock in. If they clock in beforehand, most people do. They don't. They don't clock in. He knows that we've had this concern where we've got people that are clocking in before they actually show up. So that kind of stuff happens. Really?
Yeah, I make a half-gallon water.
You couldn't have done that before.
You said showing up so fast, so you got nervous. You start freaking out.
So we addressed this, and this is how this came into play the last time. We addressed this when we started everybody, and that was where it really came into relevance. Was, what did I say? 43.75 divided by 60 times 5. All right. So if we wait 5 minutes to start the meeting, and we've got 20 people in here, that was the other day, we've wasted $72. We just spent $72. Just everybody just sitting here. So that's where that money comes from, and we're going to get into those numbers here in just a little bit when we get a little bit further in. But it was a good segue into what it is we can do. My goal for the company is to get our pay rate, our electricians' pay rates in the top 90%, average pay rate in the top 90%. The better guys are probably going to be in the 100 to 110% range of top pay, top average pay. So to get there, though, we've got to get ourselves up to a larger percentage of profitability. And again, we're going to get into that here in just a minute. So that being said, project management for dummies. I'm going to have to take this jacket off. So if you're a dummy, you're in the right place. Here. Why are we here? Why are we here?
To make money.
That's actually the perfect answer. Money. Money. All right, so the idea here, and you're going to see, and we've talked about this before, money is not our main goal. You don't see it up here in any of these boards. Now, why do we talk about it then? Why do I stress it here?
Because if we don't make money, we can't keep going.
That's correct. You guys don't work here if I don't pay you, right? Right. Right. Yeah. So money is it isn't the reason we buy the car, but it is the reason that we put. But fuel has to exist. We have to have fuel to put in the car, but we don't buy the car to have fuel. Right. So we've got to have money, and for us to continue improving our lifestyle, to improve our growth, we've got to improve our net profits. We got to improve our bottom line. You're going to see how this is going to apply to you here in a little bit, because this is everything that we're doing here is about you guys getting more money, not putting more money in our pockets, in the company's pockets. Both will happen, though. All right. So let's jump into this. Actually, I need to, before I get into I have the more interesting part of this. You guys are going to like this part. I have this right here. I'm going to give to you in just a second, but don't want to do it just yet, because I'm going to ask some questions that this will apply. All right. When it comes to there's an example I've got here of a truck that ran last year. It made right at $500,000. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and put the right numbers up here. $500,251. Our goal is 50% across the board. All right. This truck made 46%. So at 46%, hey, what's happening? I didn't expect you here today.
$4.80. What's it costing us right now? You're killing us, bro. Should have seen how much I bought for
All right. So this right here, we got to get some terms down. This right here is our gross revenue. This right here is our gross profit. Our overhead runs about 25% right now. So anytime we run our overhead, we can do it just as 25% of that. It's not exact, but it's really just a good working number.
Does the overhead include that other rate we had, the hourly rate?
No. So that's a really good question. That's what we were talking about earlier. because there is a burden. That burden is part of the cost of goods sold. Yeah. So, and again, the numbers are going to be, they're going to bleed a little bit because it really depends. Because like trucks, we originally had those as overhead. I've pushed them into cost of goods sold to try to make these numbers look a little bit better. Because our overhead rate looked really horrible until we realized that trucks really should be part of cost of goods sold, and we bill for it that way anyway. All right, so that means that if we take, that's our gross revenue, that's our gross profit. So after we've spent all the money that we need to spend hourly and for material, that's what we've got left. That number covers everything else that we have to cover. So that's both, once we take the overhead out of it, then we have net profit. So 233, 673 minus 25,062. So our net profit's $108,000. 108,611. Number still looks pretty good, doesn't it? And it's not bad. We can function with it without a problem. That's not a horrible number. But there are several things to remember. Number one, if we are to start giving out raises or bonuses, it comes out of this number. Okay? So anything we get to do starts coming out of this number. If we're to buy another truck, it comes out of this number. If we're going to buy uniforms, it comes out of this number, because we don't factor it into overhead until after we've already got that money. So if we raise that number, if we can get that number up, then we can start divvying that money out. It'll bring the percentage down, but that's okay. I don't care about actually getting 15%. I want that to go up, and then we can start saying, all right, now we got a 15%. When we say we have a 15% net profit, then we can start pushing that money back out to you guys. And I'm going to show you today how to get to that number, what it is that we've got to do, and how easy it is to get there. It's not easy, but it's not horrible. And it's going to be those little things that we talk about. All right, so remember these numbers, the nomenclature, the names. Gross revenue is the amount that the customer pays us. Okay, that $500,000 is what the customer pays us. So for that one truck, that's what the customer pays us. Gross profit is after the COGS. What is COGS? Cost of goods sold. Yep. So that means anything, the cost of goods sold means that everything that's not overhead, that's your pay rate as well as material comes out, and then that's our profit. Overhead is everything that you can't do anything about. That's my salary, that's this office, that's their salary, sales, things like that. That pays for that. All right. So that number right there, we focus on that number in here, trying to get that number down, but there's nothing you can do about that number. So you will focus on this number here, that 233,673. And I'll show you how here in just a minute. And then that right there is the end result. That's the lag measure that we're going to try to work on getting up. But you're going to get that number up by getting that number up. All right, so let me ask you this. There's a couple of numbers you can affect here. You can affect this number, and you can affect this number. That will in a turn affect this number. You can't touch this number. If I were to say, let's add 10% to this number, which means you would actually have to do 10% more work, or I want to be 10% more efficient, then what would you think I could, which one would you pick? Efficient? So not adding to it. So not adding the 50,000, but which is 10% of that, but having 10% more better efficiency. Agree? Are we all saying that? Okay, you're all right. That's exactly right. The fact is, and this is where this number comes in. I'm glad I put in 3 because I really didn't expect you here today. Well, I need 4. Shit. What's that? No. We had the same class last week. Most everybody else showed up last week. You were on vacation. Oliver was here. Rustin forgot and Jonathan forgot.
I was busy being efficient on site. I was trying to get the pipe in rain.
All right. So if you look, you guys actually can ignore everything. Just turn around on the back side. And we'll get back. And that actually is what we're going to be focused on. If you look there, I ran the numbers. If you increased productivity by 10%, you'll see that we made $550,000. If you see that we improved efficiency, then we added $50,000 to the net profit. We did better on the bottom line with adding efficiency than we did on the top line of adding to gross revenue. So if you add gross revenue of $50,000 at a 10% margin, how much do you add to it roughly? 10% margin to gross revenue. How much do you add? $50,000. What's 10% of $50,000? $5,000. Yeah. So you're adding $5,000. By improving our efficiency by 10%, we add $50,000 to that bottom line. So let me show you. Scooch up for a second. So take a look right here. That bottom line, that 108, that's what you got written right there. That's 108,611. Yep. So adding 10% to productivity, we added $7,000 here. You add 10% to efficiency, you go from 108 to 158. You add $50,000. And again, we're going to get to how that works and why. What's that?
What's the difference really overhead? Because you add more hours, you have to work more. The office has to keep up with their schedule.
That is correct. That is 100% correct. So that's the reason you add that. If you take $550,000, you add 10% to both, you get even a better number. Which effectively, if you think about it, is a wise way to look at this. If I add 10% effectiveness of my guys, and I can get 10% more jobs done. So instead of doing 500,000, I'm doing 550,000. That does actually add to that 12,000 onto the top line. But you don't have to. You can literally just take that 10% out, do 10% less work, and make more money. I know the numbers get aggravating. They're very quick to be overwhelming, right? If we're able to add that 10% in productivity, then we can add $58,000 and do the same amount of work. So we're not asking you, and to be honest with you, that's the point of all this, is to tell you working extra hours isn't the answer here. You working, saying 50 hours a week instead of working 50 hours a week, you work 60 hours a week is not the answer. We're telling you that you can walk into a job, and instead of having those guys straggle in and look around for 30 minutes, or like we were on Rustin's job the other day, and we say, hey, I've got two guys that are standing here, and I got the two older guys are working. We get those guys moving. That adds to that percentage, and it adds much more quickly than you would think it would. And I'm going to show you things, and we're going to talk about things here in a little bit, which I broke it, about how to make things more efficient and effective. Oddly enough, that actually is a really good answer.
That's what I would say. My job sites, I always tell them, don't work harder, work smarter. First thing you need is a tool belt. Because what takes up half your time?
Climbing up and down ladders and
Where's my
Yep.
That's always.
And on construction sites when I was coming up, everybody had the tool belt, and it was like around here. It was. Yeah.
I bought my guys one. If they wanted one, Home Depot, here it is. I don't want you going back to the truck. I don't want your shit rolling around.
And I don't want to see you without it on either.
That's
one
of the most efficient things. Very simple too.
Yeah, and to be honest with you guys, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's exactly the things that we need to be adding to this to make sure that we're getting the most of our guys. Now, not always are they going to need it. If they don't need those tools, it's fine. I'm not stressing that we do it all the time. If you're running conduit, yeah, you kind of need that tool belt. If you're pulling wire, sometimes, most times you're going to need it. If you're just doing taps, maybe not. So, but that's going to be your call. And I don't give a damn if you tell them, hey, you need to wear a tool belt all the time. That's up to you. And if you say, I don't need you to worry about it anytime, because you're sitting there shaking your head. I see that. I know.
A good example is when John Holcomb was training me. So he'd be working on a switchgear or something, and I'd be right next to him. John had a pouch.
Mm.
I had a suspension rig. John's doing something. Hey, I need.
Yep.
Hey, I need.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you gain that 10% very quickly. So we'll get into that here in a minute. All right. So all that, the numbers are not to try to tell you to get you to understand the numbers here. It's perfectly okay that you do, and it's perfectly okay that you don't. The idea here is that you're going to be good, that you need to know that you don't have that. You're not looking just to do more work. You're not looking just to work more hours. It's not nearly as effective as improving the efficiency. If you do improve the efficiency and you can get more out, you want to, that's fine. But if you want to work 40 hours a week versus 50 hours a week, we can do that and put more money in everybody's pockets all at the same time without making you guys work your asses off. All right. All right. So this is going to be, we're going to get in the meat of this discussion. And I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of our job here. So number one, we got several jobs of a foreman. There's a number one job of a foreman when you walk on the job site. Number one job of the lead is what?
Get people going. Safe.
Safety. You cheated, by the way. He was here last week. Safety. Safety is the number one thing. Why is safety the number one thing, and what does that have to do with money? Yes, it costs money to get hurt. Costs money how?
He brings his own band-aids too.
You get hurt, it costs in several ways. And Jesse's had people hurt on his job. What transpires? You lose the time. I mean, the very obvious, the very direct cost. You lose the time. He has to go off the job site, so you're losing him. Somebody usually has to take him. There's a drug test that's very often involved, which costs us money. And then there's indirect costs. Those costs are associated with the client being able to see that we got hurt. And if you have a client that doesn't like you, and Rustin, you know this, if doesn't like us and he sees that anything is unsafe, all he has to do is yell, hey, they're a safety concern. It doesn't matter if we're the best electrician and we're the cheapest. He's just going to boot us, and nobody's going to question it.
We've never failed to lock out, tag out anything, but he will make it known that if you do, you are gone.
Yep, and he is a goofball on that. But the fact is, we have the safety concerns that will absolutely just eat us alive. Matter of fact, Jesse's been kicked off a job before because not because he wasn't wearing the harness, but because it wasn't hooked right. Yeah. It's stupid though, and Jesse's one of the most popular people out there. So safety is number one, and we need to focus on that. We don't need to lose sight of that. And that's your job, number one, before it is anybody else's. And your guys are out there without the proper attire, you need to be addressing it. Jesse probably remembers I walked into a job site of his out in South Carolina, and the very first thing he walked up to me and said, hey, where's your hard hat and vest? I literally just got out of the truck. I drove from Georgia to South Carolina. I lay out of the truck. He said, where's your hard hat and vest? Yeah. So what did I do? Who's the boss who's the boss when I walk on the job? Exactly right. I'm not the boss. That's your job. And if you say I need You need to be wearing your hard hat and safety glasses. I'm gonna go get my hard hat and safety glasses. I will just leave the job.
What are you doing?
Pick up a scrap wire, Michael. Bend it to waste, though.
Shut the fuck up. God, I'm on camera, damn it. Don't make me cuss. All right. So your job is to facilitate that safety measure. Okay. That's number one for you. But everything else is also your job. The job of the leader is very extensive. It becomes much more than just doing the electrical work. So the next part of your job is to keep the project moving. What does that entail?
Make sure people have tasks to do.
Being prepared. Because when 5 loaner guys show up to Altium, they were not thinking about what they were going to do last night. Trust me.
That is completely true.
Be prepared for yourself.
And Rustin, I'll give you credit on that job because the day before when I came out there, you had everything laid out. We've got this here, all the materials right there. This is what they're going to do. We got this here. This materials all right here. The cables, the pulling string is in. This is what we're going to do. This is where all that's at. This is the next step. All that was laid out. We got a lot of kudos on how we ran that day. So good job on that. So that part of your job, if you walk into the job and you're just focused on what you've got to do, that's a problem. Because when you walk on there, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're just going to sit there and stand there and look at you until you tell them what to do. And you've seen that, Rustin, with those guys that are out there that your younger guys that'll literally just wait until you tell them what to do. And then I had to get on to a couple of them because it was, hey, I've got 2 older guys up here working. One of them bending over picking up copper while another young guy's just literally standing there, not doing anything. And they started moving when I said something, but that's the stuff that you guys have to keep moving. So keeping that project moving is part of that. Watching the budget, which is part of that as well. Train the up and coming. That's a tougher one because it actually slows you down, but it's part of the job. That one right there, growth, is part of the job. And you guys were in the same position at one point where you came in and didn't know anything. And the best way to learn is from the people that are sitting right above you on the job site. So no way around that. You have to train those guys. We have a responsibility to train those guys, and they're expecting you to do so, and so am I. All right, maintaining the timeline, managing materials, and communicating with a client. All right, so I don't remember if I've got. I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right, so the last few slides, I can actually tell you. That one was supposed to be 13 to 18 minutes. I'm 30 minutes in, and the one before that was 10 minutes. Actually, no, the last one was supposed to be 5 minutes. So 10 minutes, 10, 20, 25. I just want to see where I'm at. 7 minutes. Okay, we're okay. All right, so the next slides are going to run a little bit faster. So when you walk on the job site, the planning part of this is your job. I know, and you've got to understand that you've got to work against this. I know the first thought is, I want to go run some conduit. I want to go pull wire. Don't. Your number one job is to think. And if you need to do that, and this is the way I would prefer you do it, I want you to go to the job before you bring anybody else out. Because when you walk out there and you're trying to work through the job, now if you're training them and you're like, hey, so you can do this, you can be looking at this part while I'm looking at this part. Most time that's not the way it works. Most time they're standing there while you're trying to figure things out. You're writing down a material list. You're trying to figure out what needs to be done with the job. You're asking questions. That is your job. And if you've got one guy, it's bad enough. If you got several guys, it gets much worse. You saw the numbers that we just put together, how quickly those numbers add up if those guys are standing there. So the best thing you can do is try to get out there before they get started and get material together. Make sure when they land on the ground, like what Rustin did that day, everything was already there. Everything was laid out. Everything was ready to go. So once they dropped on site, they were moving. Well, you guys can tell me better than y'all were there, right?
And they made it easier because there was more than one leader there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was great, really.
All right. So the first thing we just talked about this. What's the first thing we're going to ask? When we start the planning, what's the first thing we're going to do? You're not going to get it right. It's okay. What's the first thing? What's our safety concerns? Safety is your number one thing. Don't lose sight of that. I told you weren't going to get it right, and that's okay. But you do need to be thinking of that part first. Do we need harnesses? Do we need better ladders? Because what you do not want to do is get on a job and have 6 guys over there and no ladders, or not even no ladders, but not even the right ladders. Or getting up on the ladders, the wrong ladder, having to stand on top of a ladder. I have literally gotten on to a top in the middle of a room, middle of a foyer, on top of a 16-foot ladder working on a light that was right here. Scary as fuck. So just know that I'm telling you don't do that. And whatever mistakes you make, you've got to deal with the mistake. You don't compound the mistake by doing what I did, which was stand on top of the ladder. Okay? Because it literally could have just been lose my balance and I'm dead. And there's no reason to do that. Hey, we screwed up on this one. I should have got a better ladder. Should have got a taller ladder. I need to go get that. But that's going to eat the job. But that is what I'd rather you do. All right. So safety first on that side of it. All right. Next thing. Who's the decision maker? I'm going to ask this question and try to reframe it in the way that you guys understand it. If you walk into a job and you're like, this receptacle right here needs to be, it could be 18 inches, it could be 36 inches, could be 48 inches, but I can't really tell based on what I've been told. Right. So you're gonna go to the decision maker. The client is going to be your decision maker most of the time. Sometimes it's going to be a little different, but most of the time it's going to be the client. And I want you guys dealing with the client versus going through us and us trying to be channeling as a middleman. Why is that? Communication loss, information loss. Because they can tell me something, I can misunderstand something and tell it to you, or now at this point you can misunderstand. At least if they tell you directly, there's only one person that has to misunderstand. All right, what tools are needed? The question is not what tools are needed right now. The question is when you go into a job site, what do you do to determine what tools you need?
What kind of material am I using?
What am I doing? So do I need a tugger, or can I do it with a rope? Do I need a ladder, or do I need a lift? Those are the things that need to be decided before you show up on the job site with people in tow, before you're actually even supposed to do the work. Again, you guys may think that the best thing you can do is get in there, start working, but it's not. The best thing you have to do is plan. You are no longer just electricians at this point. You've got to think a step ahead. The more people you have, the further you have to be ahead. Because you've seen it, Jesse, with how many guys you've had to run out there. They run out of material. And they're going to run out of material a lot quicker when you got 8, 10, 12 guys working than if you got 1 or 2. You've got to think ahead. You've got to have that thought process before you show up on the job site. Now, I'm harping on this. This is one little thing that you say, it seems like I'm just saying over and over again. It is actually the one main thing, is just start You start before the job starts. You think about material, you think about people, you think about the right people, and we're actually going to get into that here in a second. We'll get to that. All right. Timeline. The next thing is timeline. Again, something you do before you even start. What's the end? How much time do I have? Do I need to work nights? Do I need to work weekends? All that stuff has to come into play. And all that stuff has to be planned. Who does it have to be planned by?
Me.
You. Yeah. You can tell me that you can say, hey, the project manager should be planning that. And you can. You absolutely can. Why is that a problem?
Because now I don't get to decide or you don't know where I'm at.
It creates this exact same thing that we were just talking about a minute ago with the communication gap. If I say, yeah, we'll work night, we can do it this weekend. Then I come to you and say, hey, Jesse, I need you to work this weekend. Jesse says, nah, got this thing I'm doing with Obsidian. Can't do that. Well, then what I got to do? I got to go back to them and say, hey, I can't do it this weekend. Or I got to find somebody else. So it creates that problem. So if I come to you and you create that timeline, and they say, I need you to do it, and you say, I can't do it this weekend, can I do it next weekend? That's up to you guys to do that. It works a whole lot better than if I try to create that. Another, that also goes back to the safety factor. The safety factor of, I can't work on it live, I've got to shut it down. Then you have that communication with the client where you say, I need to shut this down, instead of me trying to do it. Because if I try to do it, then it's the exact same thing. Hey, can you do it at this time? Yes, I can. Jesse, can you do it at this time? No, I can't. And the whole process starts over again. All right. All right. So let's get into this part, materials and labor. I want to talk about this little thing right here. I wish I hadn't broken it, but so who's familiar with this? Barely legal. Caddy B18s. All right. So I had this argument with I won't say argument, because at that time I was still green enough that I just did what I was told. But I said, hey, why don't we buy these things? Because right now you're having me hang rod from, you're having me screw rod up to the ceiling and dropping it down. He's like, well, the rod is, I don't remember, couple bucks. The caddy mineralite strap that I had to hang on the top of it, and then you had to screw it in with a little angle bracket that we had. And he says, well, man, those are a few bucks a piece. He said, all this stuff is still not as much as this thing is. Now, right now, these things are about $8 a piece. So they're more expensive. So this is what I need from you guys. And this is why this is important to know what you're talking about here. He's right. What he was having me do is less expensive, but what did he not consider? Time and efficiency is part of that. All right, let me finish and I'll let you get into that. So if I take this right here and I say $8, well, now how much time do I have to save to make it worth it? Now, I'm not expecting you to do the math every time, but can you do that right now and say, I can figure out how much it is?
How many of those do he have to buy?
It doesn't matter. You're doing one per.
You have to hit a middle ground between the cost and the efficiency. I mean, because
it's
not all the time you can buy the best material. Sometimes
you're right. You're overthinking it a bit, but you're right. So let's just say I make $30 an hour times, and I said our efficiency or our burden is 175% or 75%. So that means I make $52.50 an hour divided by 60. That's 87 cents an hour. So that means I need to save about a little less than 10 minutes to make it worth it. If I'm putting up 2 of those, one on each side, plus the cost of the material, am I saving more than $8? Probably so. So that makes that worth it now. So $8, as expensive as it is worth it. All right. We'll add another little thing to that. This goes to your knowledge and the reason I encourage you guys to go to school. And let's see who knows this. How far from answer the simple question first, because I know somebody's probably going to jump into the more complicated. How far from a conduit, how far from a box do you need to strap a piece of EMT? Within 3 foot. All right. What's the exception to that?
The stud, if it's not a stud within 2 feet, you go to 5.
Structural member of the building, I believe it is, within 5 foot.
There's one more thing to add to that.
I got drilled up for a reason.
Coupling. You can't have a coupling inside that 5 feet. So just knowing that too means that if your structural members are within 5 feet, as long as you don't have a coupling inside that 5 feet, you can go that 5 feet. And as long as you can go to the code book, most inspectors are going to be okay. They're not supposed to, and I've had them do it, but they're not supposed to just say, well, it's my decision. They're supposed to be the judges. They're supposed to be the judges of that code book, not just interpreting. And I've had them where they're like, well, it's my decision. No, you're just doing what you want to do, and it's not your. But don't let me get on my soapbox about that. But just understand that if you can use that code book for your efficiency, as long as you can back it up, you need to be able to do that. Okay, and it's important to know those things, and you can start using that to your advantage when it comes to doing those installations. We've talked about motors and how to size motors and wire for motors. That's another big one, just so that you can manage those costs a whole lot better, especially when we're doing design builds like Rustin's, the things that we have to design versus somebody just putting it on prints and telling us to do it. All right. So, did you have a thing you wanted to say?
I mean, just one prime example of meeting the cost efficiency of the material in the middle is when we're doing apartments. We got to do 500 kitchens in a building. Me and Bob would always argue he wanted to use white extension cups, but the guys who are doing them backsplashes and everything, you think they're doing a nice clean job on a copy paste apartment? No. And my solution was always buy FA101s, FA102s, the adjustable. And me and him had always argued about it. You're talking about a $1.30 extension ring versus a $3 box. And the math I did, the box is better because we don't get called back on it. And we don't have to sit there and struggle with messed up plaster. And, when you install that box, run it all the way out. They have to grout around it. And, screw it back in and the loose grout falls. Your box is there, perfect. And you never have to fight with a backsplash. But that's something that me and Bob argued about everything.
And I can think of like 3 or 4 things that I can actually back up your argument with. Not that I want to get into it, but yeah, I agree.
That's just a prime example. If we spend, you're spending a lot more on material, but you're saving an immeasurable amount of time on install, and you're not getting called back for them. So
if you ever want to run a CBA, a cost benefit analysis, those are the things you run them on multiple, doing it 1,000 times, and then what you're expecting to lose out of it.
I'm sure Pelican was always just, we want the cheapest material. But
Yep.
That costs you at the end, in my experience.
Just don't pick up the phone. Call back.
All right, so we don't have to get too far into what we've got right here because I covered it in a large extent. And going through the next of these modules, we've actually got several more, and I've only got planned another 15 minutes of this. So we're going to fly through a lot of this. But do you guys read at all? Do y'all read any business professional development books at all?
I just read sports articles.
They do a thing called front loading. They put all the more, but they
NFL contract. I said I read.
You're kind of, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah. Front loading is when what I'm talking about, they put everything in the front of the book. all the necessary information is really more in the front. And so most of the most important stuff I've covered. So a lot of this right here is going to kind of recover, and we're still got some other stuff to get into. But you're going to see me skip over some things that it's really not critical to what we're trying to accomplish. All right. So when we're talking about estimating costs and cost tracking and all that, at this point, we're moving beyond the just being efficient about it, but it's also trying to figure out what it is that what the best way to do things is. So in other words, we had Callie and Brandon on a job site, and they were like, hey, can we put a lift out here instead of using an extension ladder? So those are decisions you can make. Now, if I put an extension ladder on it, most likely I didn't. If I quoted it for a lift, that's because I'll put the lift on site. I'm not going to quote it for a lift, charge them for a lift, and then make you use a ladder. That's kind of a dick move, right? Does that sound like something I'd do?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. No. So if you get on site and you're like, no, if we do this, two things. Number one, what's the number one job for you guys? Safety. If you say this really is not a safe job to do it this way, and you're going to explain it to me, I argued with Callie and Brandon about that. I still feel right about it, but they still ended up using the bucket truck. The bucket truck was here, and it wasn't being used that day anyway, so it was okay. Not a problem. I don't mind doing that. And I don't mind putting the lift out there. Just number one, once safety is the concern, the money is the not concern. Okay? We start with safety. But once we get past that part, if you say, hey, it just makes sense financially, we can move this a lot faster. You know, it may cost us $1,000 for that lift, but I'll get this job done in a day versus 5 days. How do you estimate those costs to say this is how much it's going to cost to do it for this amount of time versus this amount of time? We just talked about it. It was all the labor burden, the amount of hours you've got, and the labor burden. So if you can say, I can save this amount of time, then it starts making a lot more sense. And you've got to justify that to us because sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes you're going to look at it and say, hey, I can do this. I can do it a lot faster with a lift than I can do it with a ladder, and we can save money. But a lot of times that's not what we do it. That job, we had to have an extension ladder on some parts because the lift wasn't going to get to it anyway. So if we had to argue that one out, then we would have had to just use the ladder the whole time. Another thing to be aware of, and this is again something I saw on your job, Rustin.
Them boys don't work for Georgia Central, so
Not bring me.
If you have guys cleaning up, who do you want to have doing that?
young people.
Yeah, the cheap guys, yes. The guys that you're not paying because you want your guys that are that know what they're doing, that need to hook the wires up, that need to do everything right. You want those guys in the panels and in the switchgear. Now, save one exception, which is what? We just talked about it right there regarding growth. Training, yes. So we want if we are intentionally training somebody, that's okay. But that's not a matter of us just letting it go. That's us saying you need to be learning from you, and if you're standing there looking at your phone while they're working, then you need to go clean something because you're not learning, and that needs to be a thought process in your head. What are you saying?
Should they not be with us at least one of the days as far as growth concerned when we're doing project planning? Because how would they ever learn that if we don't have them? Like y'all have.
I'm curious to know what you're about to say.
You covered that already.
I did.
One person's fine, but I have like 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it's really your call. I'm not the numbers. Like I said, the numbers right here are numbers that I can live with. I'm not upset about this number. So if you don't make more money than this, I'm not going to tell you that you can't have a job here. But when you sacrifice that money to train somebody, sometimes you got to. That's part of our core values. But sometimes you're going to make that call and say, hey, you need to find something else to do, well, I go do this. You can even go have them cleaning out your truck while you're cleaning up, or while you're doing a takeoff or planning a job or going, you and I may be walking through a job. But I can tell you, when I walk into Rustin's job, I generally have about 4 guys following me around, not just Rustin.
They're saying, man, that
It's the glare.
they're just sitting there thinking, why the hell did he put a hairnet on?
Hey, that's not nice. All right.
They do. I don't know. When Michael shows up, they feel like they got to stop and look at Michael.
I'm just that sexy. All right. So in the amount of time that you're spending out there on the job site, one of the biggest cost factors you're going to be addressing is that last one, reducing the waste and inefficiencies. And you're going to see that all over the place. And I see it when I walk on the job site. I'm only on every job site a very small percentage of the time. And when I walk on the job site, I see it. I see it on every job. Some more, some less, but I see it on every job. One of the things that we ran into, and I hope you don't mind me talking about your job a little bit too, but there was a question of, well, do we need to keep this guy on the job site? Well, he's the ride for this other guy. We don't factor that in. Their ride, when we hire them, they've got to have their own ride. So if there's a guy that's not being effective, that guy needs to go. And again, you guys, you can make those calls, all right? But you just got to know you're sacrificing your money more than anybody else's. All right? All right. We're going to cover this very quickly. The communication part of this is we talked about this briefly. The communication part of this is more on you guys than it is on upper level. The reason that is, and Brian and I'll probably disagree with this on a large part, but there's still a certain amount that you guys are going to know on a job site that we won't know. When you say, when you get down to specifics, timelines, as project managers, we should know the high level. This is about when this is going to be done. This is where we're at. For the most part, you guys are going to know a bit more than we will. For instance, today, I get the message, when are we looking to be done with the United Signs job? So I call Jonathan, are we looking about where we said we were going to be? Just to verify, and we are. So all good. And he was actually happy with the answer. So all that stuff, that communication, if it flows through you guys, it keeps me out of it. And it only wastes your time, because he could have just called you and you would have been able to tell him versus him calling me calling you calling me calling him back.
I called him on a comment. I guess you don't like
Yeah. All right. And then you got this right here, motivating and leading a team. I want to talk about that very briefly. You guys heard me tell this story before. As a foreman, I was doing a 20,000 square foot office space. And on both sides, there's these offices that run down one side of the building, the other side of the building. They're identical. I put a crew of 2 on this side, a crew of 2 of this side. I said, whoever finishes, I said, when you get from here to this back part of the building, you get to this back part of the building, whoever gets there first, I'll buy them lunch at the end of the week. It was a $6 lunch. 2 of them. So $12. So I spent $12 and I probably got what would normally have taken them, 40 hours. Probably took them about 25, 30 hours. So remember we were talking about that 10%? How easy was it for me to get that extra 10% efficiency, time-wise? So that's something else that you guys can be thinking about. How often have you guys said, "Hey, can I buy the guys lunch?" and us say no?
Was it safe for them to race, Michael?
that was my only thing I would say is I wouldn't want them to go so quick that they.
You're nitpicking. You're nitpicking right now. No reason to nitpick. You will know that we don't sacrifice the quality for the speed, but But yeah, so when you get to that circumstance where you can motivate people just by making a game out of it, there's nothing wrong with that. Make it interesting. This part of this is the team aspect and the leadership aspect of just making sure that they're coming in and enjoying their jobs. We've got somebody that we're talking about hiring in the office, and one of my first things was, well, actually talking about Stephanie. We were talking about, hey, how no matter how good they are we going to get along with them? Because if they come in there, they're just bitchy, then I don't have an interest in doing that. So the same thing goes for you guys. If you can find ways to make them enjoy their jobs, that's an important thing to me. And it actually is more important than this.
I get the guys who shovels every now and then. Really gets
Yeah, they really enjoy digging. So yeah, and that was the thing on my side was that's the reason we even bought that small tractor was so that we could reduce the amount of digging. I came up in the field when we did a lot more digging, and I'm trying to get you guys not to have that. You didn't get into the electrical field to dig, so I want to try to get that out of you. And I don't mind spending a little extra money to where you don't have to. And I don't mind that you guys have that same thing, affinity for your guys, to where you're not making them do shit work, but sometimes you got to. And Jonathan's shown a great propensity to. I don't doubt it.
I got him the new shovels though.
He didn't bring Gatorade. He's a damn liar. Damn liar.
Yeah, man.
So we talked about this a minute ago. We won't spend more than a couple minutes on this one. The client withdrawal portion of this, this right here I've got covered as far as when we talk about safety and what the consequences of us not being safe. This is what this slide's about. Just making sure that when we run into an issue where we screw something up, somebody gets hurt, that number one, we're telling everybody, we're letting everybody know, we're getting people the help that they need, but also understand that if anybody screams safety, everybody has to listen. And it sucks because we got bitched out for throwing away CFLs, and it was compact fluorescence. And it was a big deal. And we knew better. We shouldn't have done it, but they made a huge deal out of it. And it would have been one of those things where they could just fire us because it was an environmental hazard. And just not only that's embarrassing, it's just a lot of stuff that we have to deal with when things go wrong, things get broken, or people get hurt. Correct. All right. So as much as I've said that you guys are responsible for everything, who do you think is responsible for quality control? You guys are also responsible for that too. Yes. So when you walk out of a job site, and I will, let's put it this way. If I walk into a job site and I say, that looks like shit, whose fault is it? It's your fault. Not because you did it, but because you allowed it to happen and you didn't get them to fix it. We'll just wait on you to finish, Russ.
My crew, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
No, just use the bottle. You're recycling the water. So quality control is your responsibility. That also ties into the financial part of this, where if you have to go back, that's all money right off the top line. So we talked about this a minute ago. You may think, well, it only cost me $100 out of this $500,000, but it didn't. It cost you $100 out of this net profit. Okay, so it's a much larger number than what you're thinking. So it's easy to think, well, this was it's a $500 job and it cost me an extra $50. Well, on $500, $50 is the entire profit. So a call back on a $500 job kills the job. There is no profit on that. So be careful on making sure that we don't have to go back. All right. This right here, I'm not going to hit very hard. This right here is we started a project management sheet that I really did a poor job of getting out to everybody and getting everybody to do it. That's on me because I didn't press it, and the only person I did press it didn't do it either. But we're going to need to do that for construction jobs as well as for our projects like you guys are doing. Just daily. You all right?
Yeah, true.
All right. Do we need to get you drug tested?
Yes.
Woo,
That's why he's drinking so much water.
hey man.
You done told on him. Damn. All right. So yeah, the daily logs and reports on a construction site. Most construction sites, you do a daily journal. For us, that's Service Fusion. We report daily as to what we're doing. All right. So I want to get past some of this stuff. Problem solving flow chart. Yeah, we're not as far behind as I was thinking we were. Problem solving flow chart. If you go to a job site and there's an issue, there's a certain level that you can get to. You can try to get through to have a problem solved. If it's something small and you want to train a guy, it's perfectly fine to put them on it for a short period of time. But what would you do with that? You would limit it. You would say, I'm going to give you 30 minutes. I'm going to give you an hour to work on this. But if you don't get anywhere, I need to know so I can move on it. That's part of the training, and that's perfectly fine. If it comes to a point where you are the person to do it, then that's fine as well. But that means you've got to have all your other guys moving, and they can't keep coming to you to fix it, to tell them what to do. Other factors that you need to take into consideration is it even a you problem? And I'll give you a great example of that. If you walk into a job site and they say, hey, this light's not working, I need you to replace that light. That's kind of where I'm going with that. And then you go to it and you say, there's a power issue. Well, if they're asking you to change the light out, what are you going to do?
Is it not our light?
What's your light? They asked you to change the light. They didn't ask you to fix the problem. They asked you to change the light.
Change order.
Make sure that you know where they're telling you to stop. And we've run into this many times where we walk into a job and they tell us one thing and it's something else. We've got to make sure we have that communication with them and saying, hey, this is a wiring issue, not a light issue. If I change the light, it's still not going to work. And if they say, well, I don't care, change the light anyway.
So just don't go do it.
That
we didn't tell you to do
problem solving and communication, yes.
That makes sense.
And that's the thing is that it's just like you going to say, hey, my tire's flat. I need you to pump it up. And they pump it up, charge you $20. And sure. All right. They tell you, okay, now we're just going to, it went flat again. Must have a hole. We're going to replace the tire. Now it's another $100. Okay. Great. You just charge $120. What if it goes flat again? Oh, the wheel's bent. We got to replace the wheel. You don't want to keep doing that, right?
Sound like Action Tire.
So you've got these problems, and you got this flow of problems that you need to address. So if they tell you to change the light out, you can still charge them for being out there. If you say, hey, there's this wire that you don't have power to this light. That's the flow. We need to make sure we're fixing the problem, not just doing exactly what they ask us to do. And the same thing applies to us. If we say, hey, the tire's flat, now if they just pump up the tire, it's not as big of a deal as if they replace the tire and then say, oh, that wasn't even the problem. And we don't want to be those people either. All right. All right. Last slide before we get into the next step. When you would close a job, and we talked about QC checks, we talked about callbacks earlier. When you close a job, we should be done. It should be the last part. There shouldn't be anything else to do on that job. The client should be happy. Everything should be cleaned up. There shouldn't be, oh, we still got to go back to do X thing. Both of you at the same time. It should be completed. It should be 100%. You shouldn't have to go back to the job. So I can't stress that enough, that you can't push it back and say, well, we're done, but this needs to be cleaned up. And that happens a lot here. We're done, but this needs to be cleaned up. That's got to be cleaned up before it gets called done. It doesn't necessarily be done by you. Part of your job is delegation, but you got to delegate it to somebody. And you should not, and this is something I had to struggle with, you should not feel bad about telling somebody else to clean up. You have worked yourself enough. Y'all have earned the right to not have to do it. You're still going to do it some. You're still going to dig. Jonathan knows that. He's been digging a shit ton lately.
Oh, he watched me.
But
one day.
But Jonathan's number one job is to do the stuff that Jonathan knows how to do that other people can't. So when Jonathan does the panels and building the strut racks, and the other guys are digging, that's exactly what I expect of it. But what I don't expect, and I'm going to be clear about this too, you should not be sitting in the truck while your other guys are digging. And that's something else that happens. If you want to talk about just losing money on a job, nobody wants to work for somebody like that. They don't expect you to be out there just digging the whole time, and you're not going to dig a ton, but they do expect you to be doing something, and not just asleep in your truck. And if you try to tell them, well, I'm in there, I'm planning jobs, or it doesn't work either. And it doesn't matter if it's true, to be honest with you. It's one of those things that you got to try to work around a little bit, because nobody buys if you're sitting in your truck that you're actually working. They just assume you're playing on your phone. All right, y'all want to take a break before we move on to the next step? The next step, by the way, is we're going to actually get into a job and do a little bit of planning on it.
No.
Y'all want to wait for a few minutes? You want to give a few minutes to? Okay, we'll wait. I don't think we have that much time. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys this. You're gonna do a couple of things here.
We'll share.
Yeah, I was expecting that. You're gonna do a couple of things here. When you look at that, tell me how you're going to handle that job. Tell me what you're going to do. If I walked up to you and assigned you this job, that is your job. I was actually trying to get one that wasn't you. Wasn't one of you guys. I don't know how I managed to pick that one.
How much did this one make?
I think.
That one that says negative 47.
God, I hope not.
Negative 21.
Oh, y'all were paying Carlos. Good God.
While y'all are talking about this,
I'll tell you exactly how to do it. First thing, come on Sunday, build your strut to the ceiling.
That's already a bad idea. Sunday.
Next day, start bitching at Michael. You don't have no help.
There you go. I was saying, let's go out there and look at the route first.
Me and Michael walked it prior. Got on to John DeLay for not wearing boots. I remember well.
Uh-oh. That's what up?
Every time I heard that name, I can think of a fake name.
John, no, that's
Like, you know, like John Doe.
Yeah.
The one person I'm like, John DeLay.
Yeah, he come from 5149.
He says that.
The screws. He said, come on, big head.
So the question I've got for you guys right there is the questions. What questions are you going to start asking? What are you going to want to do?
Just off this paper.
Just based off paper.
Want to go see it.
Okay, and I'm actually with you on that. And that's exactly what I would say too. Yeah, and we did. You and I walked it before we started it, and that is the idea. Is that we start it, but then after we look at it, then what? What do you know? What do you already know you need off of that, based on what I've already written? So you mentioned several things, and it's important that you recognize what Jesse just said. I don't know if Jesse even recognized the importance of what he said. Exactly. That breaker needs to be now, a now order thing, not a I'm going to order it towards the end of the job and hope I can get it. It's a I need that now. I need to go ahead and get that now.
Well, I mean, realistically, what we did too was what was the smallest wire we could put in there. And we determined that, and then we realized we could downsize to 2-inch. That was the first thing we really did.
Yep, and that's actually was a good point, because I think we made better money on that job because of it. What's the estimate number?
69,000.
9933.
So at that point, what else are you looking at? And you guys are familiar with Home Depot, so you can tell me.
Looking at what's in the way: lockers, benches.
And you guys see how you can strap it. You run it on the strut. Yeah. Is it over conveyors? That was the worst part.
What did I miss? 9933 704. So let's see how Rustin did on this job. This was one of the first jobs that Rustin did for us, by the way.
Told Michael I couldn't run pipe for shit. He just let me run.
68%.
I suggested SCR. He wouldn't go for it.
So the point is, I mean, and I need you guys to focus here. We just talked about the breaker. So the breaker is number one. Let's get that breaker ordered. And it's better if you guys start thinking, all right, what's a breaker? What breaker do I need? A lot of times we go out to bid these jobs, and this one was no exception. They're like, hey, I need this. I need this right now. We're basing it on what we know we can get. So a lot of times we make a little extra money off the breaker because we end up being able to get it cheaper. But we don't always have all the information. Sometimes we need you to help us out with that. So it's better if you guys are able to look at it and say, this is the breaker I need. Let's get this order, or if you guys order, it's even better. You can order it with your first bulk material anyway. So you order the breaker, you order the pipe, you order the strut. Why is it that I don't do that? Why?
We have a different idea of doing stuff.
That's exactly right. I can tell you how I would do it, and I had an idea in mind. When I quoted the job, I had an idea of how I was going to do it, and I priced it that way. But if Rustin came in and said, "Hey, I wanted to run OCal or I want to run in rigid," then I'm going to say, "No, I don't have a price for that." But yeah, and it worked out just fine, and it usually will. I mean, it's not usually going to be that big of a deal. PVC coated rigid, but it's like 10 times the cost. So
that's like for only like oil, right?
Eddie V's is asking for it. I don't know why, but anyway, the other things that you just mentioned. What other things that we need to be aware of? Yeah, can we do it during the day?
Well,
do we need?
Extremely dangerous because it was 2-inch pipe over lots of people's heads.
Right.
All day.
All good points.
And like we told George, how are you not going to drop it? Right there, brother. It's not coming out of these hands. that's a good point, because when George asked me how I was going to do it at Altium, I said, well, the procedure is the pipe's not leaving my hands until it's already on a truss. It's not leaving the lift till it's already supported. So that was, I mean, that's the first thing we did there too, was talk about how we were going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I would say you can push it back on them. Hey, we got to run it. This is our route. We need to push these guys out.
They did not do that. They wasn't worried.
So those are the calls that you guys have to make, and I do want you to err on the side of safety on those concerns. But those are the things that need to be addressed. How do we do this? What do we do? What's our next step? Do we need lifts? Do we need better lifts? Do we need lifts that'll reach over things? Do we need to close off areas? All that stuff is stuff that we have to think of ahead of time before we get to the job. Now, are you going to miss some stuff? Yes, you absolutely will. But the more you think ahead, the more you plan, the less you'll miss, the easier you'll make it.
I think the only waste we had on that is that we couldn't really pull a mule tape in because we couldn't terminate the gear, so we ordered a bunch of extra wire. I think that was the only waste.
Yeah. I'm sure you scrapped it and put it in your pocket.
You know, when Carlos, he just had twins, and now he's not even here. Hi, Tyre.
So when it takes a job like this, again, I can't stress to you guys enough how important it is. The planning stage of this is the most important part. And the planning stage doesn't stop day one. You don't plan it on day one and then do it day two and you're done. If you get 3 days in, you're probably doing another plan. Things have probably changed. You're probably going to have to do some more purchasing. You're probably going to have to think about who you've got, who's not working out, what skill sets you need. All that's going to change over the course of a week.
You got duct tape your cup on. That's what this up too. I didn't know.
So for that game?
I didn't know. Never ran EMT that far. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I called Michael and said, hey, I fucked up.
You gotta go back and take it off too.
I don't know. I want to take everything for when I was doing that. I take the first couple off, 20 feet coming down. Maybe Michael won't notice, you know.
So, and again, those are the things that as you learn, you get more experience. You pick those details up that will help you out. But that's it. I mean, outside of that, those are the main things to address when we're talking about just trying to save money. Is safety number one and planning number two.